To everybody. Good morning to Europe. Good afternoon to all of us here in Asia. My name is Christopher Brick. I'm with GIZ and I'm heading the CAP-C module, which is part of the Export Initiative Green Technologies of the German Environment Ministry, and for the countries we implement in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. I'm very glad to welcome you all to this sixth and last episode of this dialogue series on prevention of single-use plastics. And we've already heard the housekeeping remarks. Maybe just one more point. If you don't speak, please keep your microphone muted. Otherwise, I think everything has been said. So I'm very, very pleased and happy to have the opportunity to welcome also with us today Ms. Nilgün Parker. She's the head of unit at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment and leads the unit for sustainable financial policy and environmental and foreign trade promotion. This unit is financing the export initiative, and with that also the CAP-C module and all the work that we have been able to do here in the last 2 years. And so it is a great pleasure for us to have you with us, Ms. Parker. And I would like to hand over the floor to you for some welcome remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome from Berlin. It's indeed a great pleasure for me joining this final webinar, at least. I'm very excited to step a little bit deeper into the topic, and I will join you all the afternoon. So, dear GIZ colleagues, dear project partners, and especially dear participants, a very warm welcome from Berlin. It's not quite still early morning, but we are here joining you in the morning. As we step into a little bit deeper into today's question, I would like to emphasize that implementing economic and fiscal measures or regulations to tackle the waste problem is a step-by-step approach. It's about showing ways in which we can open up a sustainable path towards more protection of our environment and for better living conditions on local basis in line with the special needs everybody has. The contribution by our project partners is showing this impressively. We will hear about this soon more closely. At the same time, the pressure to bring about change is enormous. This applies to many areas, but especially to the area of plastic pollution, because here we have active leverage both on the manufacturer side and on the consumer side. So that's why we are taking action, and that's why we from the project point of view are very pleased to work closely together with GIZ and experts from both sides, the German side and the Asian side, to really tackle the problem and to tackle the challenges of waste. I'm very glad and hear more in the morning session. For now, I will close here. I will be participating all afternoon as it is in Asia, and thanks again for everybody joining today's webinar. Yes, I'm very pleased to be with you. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parker. And I think indeed you mentioned the step-by-step approach is also something that we see in the project implementation. And we will also hear later from our consultant, Kun Sengrod, on the step-by-step approach on our suggestions for Thailand on the policy recommendations. So definitely an important point. Also with us today is Ms. Sandra Spies from GIZ. She is heading the section on environmental policies, biodiversity, and forests. And also to you, Ms. Spies, a very warm welcome. Happy to have you with us, and would also like to hand over the floor to you for some, also very short welcome remarks from GIZ side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brick, and also Mrs. Parker. Thank you for your opening remarks. Some very short additional remarks in order to really get into the substantial fields of this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you today to this very interesting webinar on economic and fiscal measures to reduce plastic waste by making use of taxes and incentives. I think there is no need to expand on the urgency to take steps against plastic pollution that all of us, that we are all generating worldwide. Landscapes, rivers, and oceans are polluted, and traces of microplastics can really be detected in places that nobody would ever have imagined. And if we take ourselves just a second, you will generate a picture of what plastic pollution really looks like. So I invite you to really visualize what this means concretely for you. How does plastic pollution looks like? And with that picture in mind and aware of the problem, pressure led to various joint initiatives that concluded into the UNEA resolution and a mandate to prepare for a convention on plastic pollution, which are highly welcome. So that's the very macro level. A growing scarcity of raw materials and resources is a good ally that is getting more urgent recently. And this is a good ally in this endeavor. When listening to experts, I hear more and more often that the need for a circular economy is not only a question of reasonable action, but also a mere necessity to keep economies and production cycles growing. So if we really want to continue, we need to get to a circular economy approach and cannot continue as we are doing so far. Okay, so that's the reasonable stuff. So far, so good. But an international convention won't function without concrete solutions at country and also at local level. So we are at the very beginning of developing these solutions, and many countries are starting to look at upstream approaches rather than looking at what is coming out of all the waste streams. So this is having a closer look at the overall consumption of waste and the quantities we are generating and making use of in terms of plastic prevention, and also to see how can we have a much wider level of reuse. So at the moment, macroeconomic conditions do not really favor this. And in Europe, the publication of the Circular Economy Action Plan by the EU Commission in 2015, and also 2 amendments to the German Packaging Act in 2019 and 2021, refocused in this field. So there's no blueprint to follow so far, because many countries are at the beginning of how to efficiently implement these economic instruments. But therefore, it's even more important to know the range of instruments that are already existing and which experiences we can already learn from. So that's why we are here today in this last webinar of a series. And today it will focus on economic and fiscal measures for single-use plastic and packaging. And for many, the terms of fiscal instruments, economic instruments, may not sound that appealing. It might sound a little dry and a bit boring, but I am highly convinced that the power of these instruments is very, very strong, and it's really worth having a closer look at it. And it can push forward our common goal for a cleaner and healthier planet. So that's why I appreciate you being here today. I wish you a very insightful and productive webinar. I wish this to all of us, and hand back the word to Mr. Brick. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Spies, for this contextualization also towards circular economy and the whole topic of resource and material efficiency. What I would like to do is just briefly show you the program of today's webinar. I will spend a very few short 3 minutes introducing briefly the CAP-C module of the export initiative and the dialogue series, of which this is the last episode. And then we will move directly to Tobias Stauffenberg from the University City of Tübingen in southwestern Germany, with the very interesting case of implementing a local tax on single-use packaging. And I think also with the very interesting news on how the implementation since 5 months has been going, and also the litigation that is connected to that. So I am very excited to hear the news and see what learnings come out of that. And then we will go back to Ms. Parker afterwards for experiences also from Germany on fiscal and economic policy measures more generally, and then have some time for Q&A. And I do encourage you, whenever you have a question, to put it into the chat already, so that we also see what kind of topics come up. Afterwards, we will go to Italy and listen to Dr. Bertassoli, who has been very instrumental in introducing the plastic tax scheme in Italy. And last but not least, moving then to our consultant and colleague Kun Seng Rod, who has developed, as part of the CAP-C module, the stakeholder consultations and the study on applying economic and fiscal incentives for single-use plastic and packaging prevention, specifically in the Thailand context. All right. With this, just a few key facts about the CAP-C module. I mentioned already, we are one of the modules under the Export Initiative Green Technologies of the BMU. We have been operating since August 19 in a very small capacity, only in Thailand, and then increased the activities to Malaysia and Indonesia also. And the current phase is running until March 23. So we are in the last part of the project implementation of this phase. And that you see the key facts here. The objective overall is working towards the ambition of a circular plastics economy. And in this visualization, which some of you might know from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you see the ambition visualized as having a very strong and robust secondary raw material stream, so recycling. High quality recycling, closed loop recycling as the ambition, but at the same time also inside you see the reuse circle, so keeping products in the loop for as long as possible. And Ms. Spies already mentioned the update of the German packaging law and the reuse obligation that we have now in Germany as of next year. So working towards policies strengthening these reuse models. And you see also in this graph design and production and use, so really the upstream aspects of plastics, that in the design phase it is important, and you already set the groundwork basically for how recyclable such packaging, such items will become. What does CAP-C do in this regard? On the one hand, we support our partners in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia in further detailing and developing their circular economy policy framework, always with a focus on plastics. So here looking at regulatory and economic and fiscal options. We work very technically also together with the industry on developing design for recycling standards. So how to make the packaging more recyclable and bringing together the design side with the recycling industry and creating that joint understanding. Also working on the topic of recycled content targets. The European Union has set now with the Single-Use Plastics Directive very clear targets for recycled content. And together, if you think about recycled content in the packaging and the recyclability, you could really see it as the circular packaging approach. And on the local level, with municipalities working on single-use plastic prevention policies, especially strengthening reuse in local events, but also providing support to startup incubation for reuse as a service. So for example, reuse containers in food delivery is startups that we support the incubation in Shah Alam municipality in Malaysia, but also in Phuket in Indonesia and Jakarta. Phuket in Thailand and Jakarta in Indonesia. And this dialogue series is one of our key outputs in terms of knowledge management and creating also a joint understanding. The objective really is to bring together experts and practitioners who are passionate about increasing the circularity and to share the experiences not only in terms of the theory, but really of the application of such policies and regulations and new business models. And so here we usually bring together actors from Europe, from Germany, and from our Asian partner countries. You see here the topics that we have worked on. So since September last year, really starting with the technical aspects of how to set targets for recycled content in plastic packaging applications, then looking at design for recycling, and also life cycle assessment-based choices for reducing the environmental impact of packaging, the whole topic of bio-based and biodegradable plastics, and to what degree this is part of the solution, and it is a relatively small part of the solution from our perspective. And then in February, we had the role and scope of municipalities in preventing and reducing single-use plastics. Very interesting, and we will come to that topic in a minute again when we hear from Tobias from Tübingen. And now closing this dialogue series with a very complex topic and very rich topic, economic and fiscal measures, is our 6th episode. And if you want to stay in touch with us beyond this dialogue series, our colleagues from the Export Initiative headquarters, so to say, in Germany, are running also together with us the communities of practice. And this is a space to exchange and to stay in touch. You see here the link, and we will share that link also afterwards when we send you the presentation and also in the chat on EPR, on single-use plastic prevention, organic waste management and reduction of air pollution. There are dedicated communities of practice, and we invite you warmly to join those. And now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to you, Tobias, on the latest developments and also introduction into the concept what you in Tübingen are doing to reduce packaging waste. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you see my slides?
They're loading, yes.
All right, I'll just full screen them. Well, thank you for having me once again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'll just give you a quick overview on our approach in Tübingen to our local packaging tax, which we have introduced in January of this year, and what has happened since then. Just a quick introduction. My name is Tobias Stauffenberg, and I'm working in the Environmental and Climate Protection Unit of the Municipality of Tübingen. Tübingen is a fairly small city in the southwestern part of Germany, 90,000 people. It's a little remarkable that we have 27,000 out of those 90,000 are students. We have quite a big university here. Also quite a lot of it's quite a lively city, so we have a lot of food vendors in the city, which in turn produces a lot of disposable packaging trash. Just a few pictures here to give you an idea. You've probably seen those in your places as well. Yeah, we saw that it has increased a lot over the last years and decades. So there's been more and more trash, especially in public trash bins, because it's quite frankly for a small food vendor, it's easier to have their customers deposit their trash in public trash bins. So we estimated that we pay roughly 700,000 euros every year for the disposal just of the single-use packagings. So we narrowed it down, and it's roughly 700,000. After we estimated that, there has been a mechanism to translate the costs that have been developed in a study that had been published in, I think, 2020, and we matched it quite well using the method used there. So. And our idea was that we wanted to create an incentive to use reusable packagings because we do not think that just soft steering measures like campaigns and informations and ads and appeals to the customers are working, to be quite frankly, because in the end the people are, to be honest, a little lazy, and it's fairly easier for the customer to use a single-use package and not switch to a reusable if there are not certain or additional incentives. So we also saw, looking at the national level, that we do not estimate any incentives or regulation that is meaningful on the national level. Also in the implementation of the EU plastic regulation, it does not, also at the moment still, this still holds up today. It does not, there is no, in my opinion, no perspective that we will get a meaningful regulation or incentive to reduce single-use packages. There are some small steps that are quite valuable. I don't want to demean that, but if we really want to reduce, then there must be additional measures. And I mean, we're talking about the whole climate protection as well. We're talking about reducing resources. So what are we doing? What is the idea? The idea is that for every single single-use package and every that is used for food or for drinks, there is a tax that has to be paid by the vendor. So the person selling the food and filling this package. Also on cutlery, we're charging if it's single-use. This is it doesn't matter what material it is. For example, if it's single-use plastic or single-use bamboo or single-use paper, wasting of resources is wasting of resources. That was our idea. So we're charging these 50 cents on every food and drink package and 20 cents on every piece of cutlery, or well, cutlery is all the pieces together is 20 cents to make it easier for the vendor. But it doesn't matter what material it is. There is no tax if the package is a reusable package. So if it's part of a deposit system, either implemented or used just by that one business, or if it's used, if it's a pool system, there's quite a lot of pool systems that have been implemented in Germany over the last couple of years. The basic idea is you there is a deposit on the package, and you can return it at every business that is taking part in that deposit system. That is quite easily, or simply put, the idea behind it. Some use apps on the cell phone, some use just deposit in the form of money. Yes, also there is no tax if the food and drink are not consumed promptly, but that is more of a legal issue that I don't want to get into right now. It's more detailed. I only have 15 minutes, so I could talk about this for a couple of hours, but yeah. Also, we had alternatives that we're offering, and additionally, because when talking to the business, we realized, okay, we have to give them an alternative and help them to implement the reusable packages. So we implemented a subsidy system for local businesses, and to put it easy, it's 500 euros for the implementation of reusable packages, and up to 1,000 euros for if they have to buy a dishwasher. Because when talking to them before the implementation of the subsidy program, quite a lot of people told me that, well, we want to implement reusable packages, but we don't have a dishwasher. We need to buy that as well. So it would be nice if you could help us buy it. And then that was the reason for us to also implement subsidies on dishwashers. Yeah, so far since 2020, 108 businesses have been subsidized. And a couple of them have used reusable packages before. So at the moment, I think we're at 145 or 40-ish businesses in Tübingen that are using reusable packages. Some of them only use reusable, some of them use reusable and single-use packages, but at least 140 something offer them, which is quite good. And also, what was remarkable was that 60 out of the businesses we subsidized have introduced reusable packages in the last quarter of 2021, because our tax has been in effect since January of this year. So in the 3 months before, a lot of people transitioned towards reusable packages. So in my opinion, there is a clear effect there. So what has happened since then? As I said, it's been in effect since 2020 January. We observed that there is visibly less trash. So if we go back to those pictures, those trash bins are definitely less empty. It's hard to measure because the amounts that of trash that we have to dispose of every month really varies. And there's also been a lot of during the pandemic, that when people weren't able to go out in clubs and pubs, a lot of people transitioned to drinking in public spaces, for example, and just leaving their glass bottles there. So we have a slight more of a visible effect. It's also like the packages are quite light, and the only numbers that we get every month is the weight of the trash that we dispose of. I would prefer having the volume, because the packages are lightweight but have quite a lot of volume, but we don't get those numbers. But no matter who you ask, also the newspapers, they had interviews with citizens, and basically everybody said, okay, we see there is definitely less trash and more people using reusable packages. That is clearly visible. But not everything has been that easy. There is had been a lawsuit that's been filed by the local McDonald's franchise holder, backed up, I think, by McDonald's Germany. But well, they were not too happy, of course, as you can imagine, with paying a tax on every burger, basically, or every piece of French fries, every drink. which if that would have been implemented by other cities, they sort of feared about their business model, because their business model is to produce trash that people dispose of either in public waste bins or in their own waste bins. So they don't really, they're not really accountable for it. And this business model, of course, would have been put into question. Unfortunately, the first court, which was the court of the state of Baden-Württemberg, which is the state that Tübingen is in, decided at the end of March in favor of McDonald's. They argued that our local tax was not compatible with the German federal waste law, and they also argued that a local tax would only be could only work if the food is eaten at the restaurant, and not considering that a lot of it is used as a takeaway. They based this on a very old sentence from the 1960s. So, and they didn't take into account that the habits of consumers have changed since then quite a lot. So they didn't take the whole takeaway economy into account, in our opinion. And because of that, we will most likely appeal at the next level of court, which would be the federal level. But that will be in, I think, next year, or it will take another 1 or 1.5 years. Next week, our city council will decide finally whether they will do that. And the big question is, will the tax be in effect until the next decision, or will we put it out of effect? That is more of a political question at the moment, because parties in the city council argue that we should take it out of effect. I do not think so, because we have a clear steering effect. We see there's less trash, and the worst thing we could do in regard of reducing single-use packages is put that tax out of effect. And yes, that is it. If you have any further questions, you can still, here's my contact information. Just feel free to let me know, and don't hesitate if you want to exchange informations or ideas or experiences.
Thank you very much, Tobias, for this super quick presentation. You really stayed below your time limit even. I know that you have upcoming meetings, which is why we put you also first, but do you have to leave right away, or would you still be a few minutes available for some questions? If
I said I'll be late a couple of minutes, so 5 minutes is fine.
Okay. So then I would just invite everybody, in case you have immediate questions. I think this is a very interesting, concrete case, making use of the opportunity now, having Tobias still with us. If there are any questions, immediately, please do share. I would have one, and that is the last time you shared this experience with us, you were also saying that in the 90s, in Germany, Kassel had tried a similar approach, and back then they also failed in the legal instances after they were being sued. But then it was because the packaging law was different, and you said that you were quite certain, because of the introduction of the waste hierarchy as the predominant architectural element in the packaging law, that reuse really should be at the top of the pyramid. And I was just wondering, how do you go into this legal battle? Like, are you confident, or do you see aspects that you think you may not have foreseen earlier?
Well, the argument that the court made was actually not that the waste hierarchy isn't the supreme level, but they argued that the waste legislation in Germany is closed. and that therefore a city is not allowed to introduce a tax on the national level, and because of that, that our tax is not in accordance to the waste jurisdiction. So I'm not a lawyer, and this is really new terrain in the legislative system. So I can only give you my hopes, and of course I hope that we are working there. But even our lawyer says he can't really say where the court will decide on the next level, because this is completely new territory, and we have no idea.
Okay.
But we're optimistic, of course. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
Right. Very good. Dorothee, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christopher. There are, by the way, further questions in the chat. Maybe we should bring them up on slides. Tobias, my question is, do you see any solution in this conflict, Tübingen versus McDonald's? Is it possible that you change your system, or is it possible that the law is changed so that it also applies to Tübingen, to McDonald's?
I don't think that that McDonald's will withdraw their case. The only option would be if there would be changes at the national level in the legislation, for example, that we would get a nationwide tax on single-use plastics. I would be open for that. And even McDonald's even argues in that direction. They say they don't want a local solution; they want a nationwide solution. But if we look at the implementation of the EU plastic guideline, I'm not too optimistic that we will get very ambitious legislation at the national level at the moment. There's also in the current what is it called, with the current government, they basically, there is no, in their treaties that they have made the parties with each other, there is nothing indicating any direction in that regard.
Yeah, thank you, Dorothee, also for putting my attention to the chat. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing the slides. Maybe one question more from Jane, who is very actively working with us in Phuket, also on introducing reuse as a service there. And the question is whether you had explored centralized dishwashing in Tübingen at all.
Yes, we looked into this, but in the end, it wasn't really, we couldn't really find any logistics company that we talked with some that had experience in that regard, and it didn't really work out for Tübingen. I think Tübingen is too small, and a lot of businesses had dishwashers already. And I think we also, Tübingen is quite hilly. It's a constant up and down, and if you want to implement it, it's very narrow streets. So it didn't really work out in our opinion, and we didn't really want to spend money in that regard. We had a survey with the local businesses where we asked them, would this be something you would be interested in? And we asked 450 businesses, and just 10 answered, and they all said no. So we didn't really put more effort in it.
Okay.
But this could be different in other cities, definitely. I think Berlin is experimenting with it. In Munich, I think Recap are experimenting with that. So there are providers of reusable package systems that are working on this, definitely. But I think for Tübingen, it's just not a solution.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot. And yeah, we talked about the legal aspects. And I think one more question coming in. Do you think taxes on single-use plastic items should be applied in Indonesia? Would this be politically palatable?
Well, 10 or 12 years ago, I worked in Indonesia for a couple of months, but I'm not really, there was more of environmental protection project back then, so I don't know about the legislation in Indonesia. So it really depends on the legislation, whether it's possible or not. So I have no idea.
Yeah, and maybe to Mr. Kellman, we are actually right now in Indonesia talking to the political partners on the CAP-C project, and we see there's still a lot to be done. So I think we're currently conducting a study on economic and fiscal measures in Indonesia. So we hope that in a few months we will be able to answer maybe this question also a bit more with a bit more stakeholder consultation. Okay, Tobias, thank you very much for your time again and for sharing this very interesting approach. And yeah, we will let you now go to your other duties. Thanks a lot again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and terima kasih to Indonesia. I think that's one of the few things I remember, but well, I wish you a good conference.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. And with this, we would now zoom out again, back not from the municipal level, but back to the federal level. And I think we had a nice segue already, right? Seeing the question of legal certainty when a municipality tries to move ahead, introducing concrete fiscal measures. How is this being possible with the legal framework, with the understanding of the courts and also the legislation? I'm not saying, Ms. Parker, that you now have all the answers to these questions, but we will move to the federal level with you again and handing over back to you.
We have a saying in Germany: before the court and on high sea, you are in God's hand. So I do not can foresee how the local law court will be decided. So I will not speculate on this right now. The question which was raised is whether we need a national legislation or not. From the German perspective, I would say that the federal government is of the opinion that within European law, we do not need a single national legislation to tax the use of packaging because we are within the legal framework by the European Union. So let's wait how the court will decide. If the court is of other opinion, then indeed the federal government is dealing with the question very intensively. So this case might be a good example to get legal certainty in the future. Yes, so it would have helped if we have the case decided already, but this is not the fact. So just let me then take you a little bit higher up the political level and tell you why we are certain that European regulation does give local municipalities the certainty to tax the use of plastic. It's because we have since 2019 in Europe the so-called single-use plastic directive, which clearly defines measures to prevent and reduce the proliferation and the use of plastic packages throughout a whole battery of measures. And those measures can be applied by local municipalities as well. So again, Germany is not integrated into a very broad framework by the European Union. So waste prevention, therefore, has a long history in Germany, and Germany was one of the first countries to introduce legislation for the polluter pays principle through an extended producer responsibility. It's the so-called EPR system for packaging, which was already implemented in 1990. And this is the basis for the court to judge on local measures as well. And this has developed significantly since the legal framework provided by the Verpackungsordnung. In English, it's the packaging ordinance was amended several times over the years and was recently replaced by a new packaging act that entered into force in January 2019 with strengthened the EPR system and the obligations of companies. The most recent amendment of this act in 2021 puts an emphasis on reuse through a reuse obligation system. We call this Mehrwegpflicht, mandatory offering of reusable packaging, will be starting in 2023. So this will be one very crucial measure to reduce as well packaging material on all levels. It means that, for example, catering businesses must offer reusable packaging as an alternative to single-use packaging. Disposable plastic food packaging and disposable beverage cups, for example, are to be reduced in everyday life. Of course, each country must, this is where we then need to discuss, must develop its own strategy depending on the specific starting point. And this is something we start later on for Asia. Just with this overview, I just want to point out that general framework regulations will give you the means to tackle or to reduce the use of plastics and especially packaging plastics, and will give you the legal basis, for example, for taxation systems as well. With this, let me just stop. I think we should rather answer concrete questions. I'm very excited to hear more about systems in Asia as well. So thanks for your attention, and I will be happy to answer questions later on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parker, for this contextualization and putting again the emphasis also on the general framework regulations, and in this regard in the EU with the Single-Use Plastics Directive, but also the European Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan. There's definitely a lot that is giving guidance for German policymakers. Maybe staying in Europe for a little longer, looking at one other example on a fiscal measure that is the plastic tax, as it is being implemented in Italy. And we have Dr. Gianluca Bertazzoli with us. And I'm wondering if, Mr. Bertazzoli, you are indeed with us. And if so, if you could turn on your camera and come in. As this is not happening at the moment, I'm asking my colleagues Dorothee and anybody if you had heard from him today.
Not today, but since according to our agenda, we still have 10 minutes until his actual speech
Okay.
starts. Maybe he's
Right.
coming later. So we either should take first Q&A session or go over to the next speech.
Right. Okay. As I don't see in the chat any concrete questions right now, going beyond what we had taken already. Then I would suggest, Kun Sengrod, if you are ready, that maybe we move on to Thailand and on the concrete example of the study that you conducted on the feasibility of concrete measures for the Thailand context. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christopher, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone again. Thanks for this opportunity to speak and to share my experience in conducting this study for the CAPC project. And what I'm going to show today is, sorry, I have to share my slide, right? Apologies.
Actually, we can click for you, however you like.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll upload my slide. Run.
Yes, can see now.
All right. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the results of a study commissioned by the CAPC project to look at the select economic and fiscal measures being used in different countries, and most notably in Europe, and also some in North America and in advanced Asian economies. We'll start with the snap, kind of an overview, a quick overview of the single-use plastic waste situation for those, for the many of you who may not be familiar with the Thailand situation, and briefly touch upon legal policy and regulatory constraints and public awareness and collective response from government, businesses, and civil society. And then, we'll go into further details of the measures being implemented, by countries, including Thailand, and offer some lesson learned and recommended measures for the country, and before moving forward. So each year, Thailand generates about 2 million tons of solid waste, but only about 25% of them are recycled. Plastic waste constitutes about 12% of the total solid waste and nearly 1/3 of the municipal waste in Thailand. The graphics on the screen shows that in 2019, actually the year 2563 is a Thai year. 2019, there were about 9.3 million pieces of solid waste leaked into the Gulf of Thailand, and up to 77% of them are plastic, and of which 60% are single-use packaging. According to a study by the World Bank in 2020, Thailand generates about 2.8 million tons per year of plastic that are not recycled, resulting in up to 87% of loss in plastic material value. And the good news is the country's recycling rates are progressing, but the bad news is it's not kind of fast enough, to catch up with the daunting amount of waste, coming into the stream, not to talk about imported plastic waste as well. In the first half of 2020, the amount of plastic waste jumped from 15% from the previous year. And in Bangkok alone, the jump was as high as 62% from the previous year. Some challenges are captured in, on this slide. First of all, plastic waste problem is handled by different levels of agencies and by various laws. And local governments are in the front line, but they focus mainly on collecting, transporting, and disposing of the waste. Not to talk about their limitation on budget and also on technical capacity. The two pyramids on the right, show kind of two different patterns of waste management. The lower one is a circular economy waste management, where we would put prevention reduction at the highest level, meaning this will get the highest attention and focus, and cascading down to reuse, recycling, recovery, and disposal. With disposal will be the least kind of emphasized. Although in Thailand, I mean, this pyramid is not inverted. It's an actual pyramid with the emphasis being placed mostly in disposal, recovery, and recycling. And as I mentioned earlier, there's collective action, response and action from the government, from businesses, and from civil society. Over the last 5 years, the problem has gained increasing attention from the government, and plastic is now on the national agenda. The government put out a roadmap on plastic waste management, which kind of the different levels of targets, banning 7 types of single-use plastics over several years from 2018 to 2030. They also kickstart, the government also kickstart the roadmap in 2020 by launching this nationwide campaign called Everyday Say No to Plastic Bags, which much fanfare, very well received by the society. The private sectors joined the campaign, but only to be derailed by COVID, because when COVID came in the early 2020, I mean, this campaign has been kind of put on the back burner, and now it seems to be waning. Nonetheless, the private sectors themselves organize several actions and initiatives, to take back materials, not only plastic, but also other types of material like cardboards and whatnot. Yeah. The civil society also have campaigns to turn plastic waste into various types of products, including monk robes, this, and also clothes, apparel, and many more. So let's look at, with all these response, where we are in Thailand. I got to say that this collective response, from the government, from private sector, and civil society has led to increased awareness and action toward the solutions. But most responses are unfortunately focused heavily in the last 3 levels of this inverted pyramid, as you see on the screen. Very little attention is given to the upper level or upstream levels of the pyramid, which are prevent, reduce, and reuse. Okay, so the study that I mentioned, or I alluded to in the beginning, was commissioned by the CAPC project and was conducted in late last year till the first quarter of this year, to look at economic and fiscal measures used by countries to address this problem, in other countries. And to analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of prevailing measures, and also to shortlist and identify targeted measures for Thailand for implementation. This slide shows a kind of plethora of economic and fiscal measures used for single-use plastic problems, out there. It's not an exhaustive list of measures, but these are prevailing measures that are implemented. A lot of them are actually implemented in Europe. The So the study looks at these measures and also conducted SWOT analysis of each measure to see, you know, their advantages and disadvantages of each. So when we plot these measures against the sort of the waste hierarchy that we saw earlier, you know, this is how you will see it. Okay, you see that many of them are clustered around reuse and recycling, whereas some aim to achieve more than one or two objectives. You know, you see a bigger kind of the bigger bubbles, you know, that spread across different levels. In Thailand, here are some of the examples of measures already being put in place, although not all of them are being implemented, you know, effectively. Some are well set up and running and operated, but some are just starting. Going from the left to the right, the consumer rebates is one of them. This is where you get a bonus point, you know, at retailers when you don't bring your when you bring your own reusable shopping bags. You know, the tax incentive for recycling businesses are already being offered to businesses that invest in recycling activities. Green public procurement has been a policy, albeit a voluntary basis. EPR is just starting, you know, in Thailand in the pilot phase in the Eastern Tourist and Industrial province. We'll see how it goes. Single-use plastic packaging levies, you know, also introduced in the form of single-use plastic bag fee. Deposit refund scheme, well, not really the type of scheme that we see in Europe or in other countries. This is more like, you know, you bring your own empty bottle, put in the machine, and you get a bonus point, you know, for cash discount. West Bank has been implemented in Thailand for a number of years. This is where community members collect empty bottles and other kind of materials to the program, and then they sell it, you know, to recycler, and the money gets shared, you know, among the members. Plastic credits is similar to West Bank, except that there is a interaction between the program and private sector who buy the credits, you know, from the program. And the last one at the bottom, this is the new tax incentive for the use of biodegradable plastic introduced by the government to businesses who purchase biodegradable plastic, but they have to be eligible, you know, 11 type of plastic that the program kind of specify. Would like to offer some lesson learned and observation, you know, from all these measures implemented in Thailand. First of all, I think, you know, all these measures are voluntary in Thailand and designed to incentivize compliance. There's no penalty for non-compliance. Most of them focus mainly on recycling and disposal, with the exception to a few, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the green public procurement and EPR, and also single-use plastic bag fee, which can achieve multiple objectives, but would require more rigorous support, promotion, and enforcement. There's also a growing number of waste-to-energy facilities in the countries, you know, as a kind of a win-win solution to get rid of untreated waste in the country, but while also offering energy, you know, to communities, and sometimes to the grid, back to the grid as well. The campaign, the national campaign that I mentioned earlier, was launched in 2020, is now waning, as I mentioned before, and it needs to be reinvigorated. Some measures are well set up and operated, and they need to be scaled and used as the leverage, you know, for other campaigns or policy such as the EPR or the green public procurement. Some measures need support or rigorous implementation, such as the SUP single-use plastic bag fee, EPR deposit return refund scheme, and some policy can lead to desirable sustainable impact and must be prioritized. These are the three that I highlighted. Tax incentive for the use of reusable packaging and packaging with recycled content, which are not in existence yet. Tax incentives for recycling businesses and green public procurement. And last but not least, measures that focus on prevention and reduction should be more promoted. So after going through the SWOT analysis of each measure, combined with interviews with experts and consultation with various stakeholder groups, 6 measures have come out of the exercise and as viable measures for Thailand. They are grouped in 3 major sort of objectives, reduce, reuse, and recycle. So I want to go one by one. The first one is to achieve the reduction of single-use plastic packaging. For this objective, 2 measures are highlighted. One is a single-use packaging levies, and the other is a tax incentive for the use of reusable packaging and packaging with recycled content. They will benefit, from ongoing implementation of the consumer rebate program and the proliferation of refill shops in the country, and the upcoming introduction of the reuse as a service business model, that CAPSI is going to introduce in Phuket. The first measures, single-use plastic bag fee, these basically will expand the early success from the no plastic bag policy at supermarket. I think, even nowadays, people who go to leading supermarkets and shopping mall, they are getting used to not getting a free plastic bags, so I think let's expand from that, use that as a kind of as a platform, as a springboard, to create a continued momentum. And also there's a momentum, created by global brands and growing awareness of national companies and increased public awareness on that. What that need to be done is to determine on the levy to be charged, a survey, a consumer survey, will have to be conducted in order to determine the charge. And also, what we support, this measure is the introduction of alternative solutions such as the reuse as a service for the food sector. The second measure, tax incentive for the use of packaging with recycled plastic content. This will primarily be introduced for brand owners and manufacturers of plastic packaging with recycled content targeting the 4 main type of resins, PET, PP, HDPE, and LDPE. It will support, promote the pilot EPR program, national guidelines for recycling content traceability, and the requirement for recycled content in plastic packaging, which is still in the planning mode. And there should be public campaign as well, for the biodegradable packaging to make people better understand, the pros and cons, of these type of packaging, and support investment of the disposal facility of biodegradable plastics, which, by the way, is a government policy. Number 3, tax incentive for the use of reusable packaging what I'm proposing is to extend BOI, the Board of Investment tax privileges to new type of businesses that are oriented toward circular economy, with the specific targets on these three sort of sectors. One is a food delivery sector, and this incentive could be in the form of like tax deduction for income or for machinery, like the washing machine that we are talking, the dishwasher that we are talking about earlier. Fast-moving consumer goods, similar to the model, the loop model, introduced in some European country and in Japan as well, where consumer products are served in reusable containers, and consumer pick them up and get and pay the deposit for the container and get refund when they return the container. And refill shops that are kind of operating out of their own, right now, I think they should, they deserve more support, from the government. Also, I think this measure will be supported by the design for reuse standard for foodware and beverage containers and cups. Moving on to the reuse type of measures, in order to achieve increased demand for reusable packaging, two measures are highlighted here. One is the deposit refund scheme, and the other is the same, actually, that were mentioned earlier, the incentive for reusable packaging and packaging with recycled content. Okay, the deposit and refund scheme should be applied for low-value single-use packaging, which will likely end up in landfills. So this is, as far as I understand, is being considered by the EPR pilot program in Thailand to incentivize, collection of these low-value plastic, because normally, of all these great initiatives that are out there, they mainly focus on the kind of higher price plastic, namely PET or HDPE. Yeah, and so and should also complement the reuse as a service project, in Phuket as well, where a refund can be introduced, to containers, of the food company. The next measure I already mentioned, in the previous slide. Moving on to the recycle type of measures, to achieve increased recycling rates and demand for recycled products. Three measures are highlighted. Okay, so tax incentive for recycling investment, green public procurement, and extended producer responsibility. Just to go a little bit beyond just what's already there, I think these three measures are already in Thailand, but what we are offering is to broaden or to expand them. For example, the incentive for recycling investment or recycling business should focus more on extending the tax exemption for recyclers from 3 years to at least 5 years, and then increase exemption for plastic recycler for up to 8 years. Also, privileges should be expanded to, the washing process and MRF, material recovery facility. EPR, I already mentioned it. Green public procurement, although it's introduced, there's a kind of limited size of the supply chain right now, so it needs to be promoted. My last slide here, addressing single-use packaging problem effectively requires not just good policy and measures, but also people mindset and cooperation. So one thing that is not on the landscape of measures that I showed earlier, but is critical for this measure to be successful, is the mindset of circular economy. Okay, and to start with that mindset, I think there need to be a serious kind of introduction and implementation of the waste separation, in the country. This is something that is missing in Thailand and should be picked up, and implemented effectively. Thank you very much, for your listening, and I will give the floor back to Christopher.
Thank you very much, Sangrod, for this comprehensive presentation of the suggestions that the CAPC project is currently making to the Thai stakeholders, and I think we are very interested to now see also the feedback in the coming weeks. It's also my pleasure to welcome Mr. Bertasoli to our group. Great to have you. I'm
really sorry for your misunderstanding about the schedule time.
Yes, we had a little misunderstanding about the Central European summertime and Indochina time. But now we resolved that. Thanks a lot, Dorothee. As I do not see in the chat any immediate questions, I would suggest, Mr. Bertasoli, that we actually move directly to your presentation.
That's okay. It's okay. Good morning, everybody. And I'm apologize for my bad English. It's not good English. Help me with some slide in English, of course. It's better for me. It's better for you, I think.
Yes, and we also thankfully have a colleague from our partner institution, the Öko Institute, Chiara Magrini, who
yes, good morning. Yeah, I can help.
Yes, who speaks Italian and English, and who will help with any translation issues or understanding issues.
Can you see my slide?
No.
No.
Not yet, no.
Not yet. And now?
No, not yet.
Yeah, it's coming.
Coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, here we go.
Yeah, almost.
Yes.
Maybe you can switch into presentation mode.
Yeah, yes.
Perfect.
That's okay. Welcome, everybody. I already said it. I'm Gianluca Bertazzoli. I worked for 20 years in the Italian EPR system for packaging, especially plastic packaging, like CONAI, if you know, dealing with legal and institutional issues, operational for separate collection services, but also related to communication. From 2006 to 2008, I was a consultant to the Italian Parliament Commission on Waste Management, and between 2007 and 2008, I was manager of the Authority for the Waste Emergency in Campania. I don't know if you remember or if someone of you saw the terrific images from Naples with rubbish waste until the third floor of the palace of the in the street. Now I am a freelance consultant with my own small consulting firm called AB15, which specializes in environmental planning and management systems. Now we can enter in the middle of the problem. Italy in 2019 has introduced by the annual state budget law a tax on consumption of single-use manufactured products. which condition for the application of the law? The characteristic, the type of manufacturer. The manufacturer made with the use, even partial, of plastic materials consisting of organic polymers of synthetic origin. Manufacturers which have or are intended to have the function of containing, protecting, handling, delivering goods or food products. And last, manufacturers not conceived, designed, or placed on the market to perform multiple transfer during the cycle of life, or to be used for the same purpose for which they were. Mono-use, single-use manufacture. All plastic products that fall within this previous description are defined by the law as MACSI, M-A-C-S-I, manufatti con singolo impiego, single-use manufactured products. Are excluded from application of the tax only biodegradable and compostable MACSI, according with the standard UNI, MACSI considered medical devices, MACSI which contain medical preparation. Even the recycled plastic component that may be present in the MACSI exempted from the tax. Only virgin plastic, not recycled plastic. Referring to a United European Union and Italian packaging law definition, MACSI are not only plastic packaging items, and not all plastic packaging items are MACSI. For example, a plastic straw or an ultralight plastic glove aren't packaging items, but they are surely MACSI. Instead, a reusable plastic bag for European law or Italian law is a packaging, but it is never a MACSI. Also remember that the plastic tax law is designed before and independently of the European SUEP single-use plastic directive. This is very important. In effect, in Italy, the idea of establishing a plastic tax is originated for fiscal reason, not for environmental reason. This genesis is perhaps the original sin of the plastic tax and has caused that the whole matter was badly coordinated with already existing environmental regulation. However, plastic tax is added to the environmental contribution envisaged in Italy for packaging within the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility System. Plastic tax is a independent thing. It's not coordinated with the whole law and the whole definition by the law. The amount of the tax was originally set at 1,000 euros per ton of MACSI put on Italian national market. The tax is placed on every ton of plastic present in a MACSI, even if it's made up not only of plastic, but only the plastic component is therefore taxed. The calculation basis is the weight of a plastic component present in each MACSI when it's placed on the market. However, the semi-finished products that will then compose the MACSI can also be taxed, provided that the taxation is not then duplicated. This surely creates considerable application difficulties, and is one of the causes of difficulty of application of the law. Which are being the reaction to this law. The whole plastic industrial sector, it produces transformers and so on, has immediately strongly contested the new tax. It's normal. Also, Italian environmental movements have never expressed an unconditional appreciation for the law. The opposition from the Industrial Association immediately had the effect to leading the reduction in the tax from 1,000 euros per ton to 450 euros per ton. Indeed, 1,000 euros per ton was in some cases, not now with the current price, higher value than that of the raw material itself. This is a problem. Perhaps 1,000 euros is too much, but the industrial sector have worked against the law. Plastic tax should have entered into force in 2020 July, but there have been many postponements, and now the deadline is set at 223. Begin of 2023. The reason for the constant postponements are strong opposition from industrial sector, is normal, of plastic, which has found support in some political forces, also present within the government. Economic crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, it's a bad economic situation caused the pandemic status. Considerable application difficulties, not simple to applicate the tax. To be sure, after 3 years, there are many people in Italy who doubt that this tax will ever actually go into effect. It's not sure, perhaps maybe that the tax fall in the future. It's 2 years of attempt. It's difficult. The application of the law is quite difficult. An Italian custom agency should have prepared an operating procedure for some time, but the document is slow to be definited. The main difficulties are the technical difficulties, not political difficulties. Determination of the amount of plastic present in each maxi. Determination of the amount of recycled plastic present in each maxi, since the portion of recycled plastic that may be present, it's exempt from the tax. Identification of the application point in the case of semi-finished products. Check on imported maxi. It's very, very difficult to know the exact composition of imported items. It's not simple. At the end, this is an Italian law, but in 2020, also European Union introduced an European plastic tax. In this case, too, the immediate purpose is not environmental, but dictated by budgetary needs to recover part of the losses suffered by the EU budget following Brexit. It's not environmental causes, but budgetary. It's money. It's need money. Okay. European plastic tax is strongly different from the Italian one. In any case, it adds to and does not replace this one. It is in fact a payment by the member state to the European Union budget equal to 800 euros for each ton of non-recycled plastic packaging waste. It's not simple to determine the exact quantity of not recycled plastic waste. No, not simple operation. This tax is therefore paid not directly by European Union citizens or companies, but by governments on the basis of non-recycled plastic packaging. The revenue from national plastic tax could provide the Italian state with the resources to pay the European plastic tax. But the European law does not place any restriction on the origin of methods and the methods of finding the resource. The resource can be founded also with other tax in the budget. It's not necessary and environmental origin from the resource to pay the European plastic tax. It's clear. Now, I've finished, but I like to do a final reflection, and this reflection, I think it's important. Plastic industry should ask themselves some questions. It's plastics has reached such a point of unpopularity that if you need to make cash with a tax, it's the ideal target to it, because everyone will be happy to pay it, or at least they will be less angry to pay. But I always say plastic it's now a pungible. Right? Do you know a box a pungible to be to on this bit when you have some problem. In everybody it's happy to beat on the plastic. It's a reality, and I know that the plastic industry have something wrong ever done in the past. If the situation is this. Thanks for your attention. I apologize another time for my English, but I hope that this is some questions. Somebody help me to understand your questions. Okay, bye. Thank you very much. And I return to the normal vision of my.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertasoli, for this presentation. And I understand that you will also stay with us for another
for
minute.
For an hour.
Right. We have another 20 minutes for questions and answers. That's great. So I would like to open the floor to any questions to all of our presenters, except of course for Tobias Stauffenberg, who had to leave already. And I see in the chat the first question to Kun Sengrod about deposit refund system. You are recommending the deposit refund system only for single-use beverage packaging. Is this true? And how about a DRS for reusable, refillable beverage containers? How can the policy in Thailand support fiscally in increasing the share of reusables and refillables?
Thanks for the question. I think I briefly touched upon that. So DRS is not only recommended for refillable, reusable beverage containers, but also for the reuse as a service model as well. Whereby I think people who patronize this model, this business model, they will get a refund for their for the container that they receive from the food vendors, and once they return the empty container, they get the refund back as well. And I think that the support fiscal incentive could be in the form of BOI privileges as well, to the operator, to the vendors, who participate in this program. I think the detail of which will have to be further fleshed out, at the implementation stage.
Okay, thanks a lot. Sid, is that question answered for you? Okay, great. Then I would have a question also to Mr. Bertasoli. You mentioned in your presentation that in the legislation, biodegradable and compostable plastics were exempt from the plastic tax, and we see also a similar legislation or similar privileges in Thailand and in Southeast Asia being given. And I was wondering if you could share a bit on the rationale in Italy, why those products were exempt from or are exempt from the plastic tax.
In Italy, biodegradable and compostable plastic is it's very important. In Italy has the most important industry of bioplastic in Europe and perhaps in the world. In Europe, surely. Bioplastic is a very, very the government is very a great fan of bioplastic. Also in reception of single-use plastic directive, Italy has exempted bioplastic items, and this can cause a conflict with Europe. Single-use plastic directive includes also bioplastic. Italy has excluded bioplastic. Someone could say that bioplastics is very, very strong lobby in Italy, and also for the plastic tax, it has been excluded. But Italy have a long story about bioplastic and organic waste collection with bioplastic bag. In Italy, you know, the organic waste collection is very, very strong. It's very, very present in every town, and bioplastic is important.
Okay, yeah, I think we see similar dynamics also in Southeast Asia. Another point that you were raising, Mr. Bertazzoli, in your presentation is the difficulty of accurately determining the amount of recycled plastics, right? Because the incentive also to use recycled content. The EU has set recycled content targets, and this is also measures that we recommend in our work here. I was wondering if you could share a bit, because then this is a nitty-gritty aspect for this tax, right? And very important for the implementation. If you could share a bit on the details of how it is planned to do it, if that is already clear.
But the first version of the law, the idea of establishing a plastic tax is originated from Ministry of Economy for fiscal reason, not from Minister of Environmental for environmental reason. And in origin, also recycled plastic was taxed in the first version. Then Minister of Environment imposed that recycled plastic is not taxed, but this it's good. It's a good thing. This, but this had has produced more difficult cause it's very, very difficult to know how much recycled plastic do you have in an item. It's not very simple. And this is a tax. You can't use an simple system. Somebody says, I am 25% of recycled plastic, but there is some money and you can pay a tax if it's sufficient to say how many recycled plastic. Nobody pay. Everything is recycled plastic. Then you can find a method for determining how much recycled plastic you have in each item. The difficulty is more and more bigger for imported items.
Mm-hmm.
This is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Because the tax is charged at the level of the producer.
Of the producer, yeah. And then the producer sell its item.
Mm-hmm. Okay, definitely traceability and figuring out and proving the amount of recycled content is a challenge. Another question.
A good big challenge.
Big challenge. Another question on the impact. What impact do you expect when the tax goes into effect?
There is some valuation. In Italy, you have 2 million ton of maxi. If you pay 450 euros per ton, you can say this is the impact, economic impact. But industrial sector of plastic is very, very strong to defend it. And maybe in effect that the tax will kill. Well, taxes will not have no future with tax, perhaps.
Okay.
And the tax in Italy, the law put two law, plastic tax and sugar tax for sweet beverage like soft drinks, and all two are the same problem. Industrial sector is very, very, very strong against it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Another question from Chiara. You said that you explained to us that the tax was introduced for fiscal reasons and not for environmental reasons. And you said that from your perspective, the tax could be better designed for the environment. And of course, for our audience here, we have a lot of participants from Thailand, Malaysia, and also some from Indonesia now looking in developing future legislation. For us, it would be interesting to hear from your perspective. Could you explain this further? What could have been better designed from your perspective on this tax?
It's very, very difficult. But
the question was so if you want, I can also speak it in Italian. Yes. if you prefer. So la domanda era come potrebbe essere disegnata,
le rispondo in italiano, mi spiace per gli altri, I'm sorry for the other, but allora, il vero problema è che questa legge è scordinata da tutto il resto.
Okay.
Cioè, quindi è scordinata da tutta la legislazione ambientale italiana.
Okay.
Nella legge la parola packaging non c'è mai la parola imballaggio, è completamente una cosa a sé stante, proprio perché nasce da un'esigenza diversa e da un'entità diversa che è il Ministero delle Finanze, diciamo, per le ragioni fiscali. Probabilmente, quindi crea una confusione infernale, perché, come dicevo, non tutto il packaging è colpito, ma viene colpito anche degli articoli, some items che non sono packaging, quindi non si sovrappone, non sono sovrapponibili. Questo francamente è di una difficoltà e di un elemento di confusione infernale.
Okay. So to briefly summarize, the problem is that this tax, the design of this tax was not really connected to the other laws that are in place in Italy, according to Gianluca Bertazzoli, of course. And so, for example, there is no in the law itself, in the text of the law, the word packaging is not mentioned at all, and yeah, this law, this tax in general creates a bit of confusion in people, because and in industrial, I would say also in the industrial people, because not all the packages are included, and some items which are not packaging items are included. So this create confusion in the manufacturers of plastic items.
It's more similar to single-use plastic directive. The idea of MEXI is more similar to single-use plastic item of directive single-use plastic.
Yeah, it's not only packaging, but it includes all the single-use items, right? Yeah, the same problem. I think the same exactly the same discussion was in place in Italy when we had the transposition of the single-use plastic directive at Italian level. So there was a lot of debate on which item we have to include and which item are not included. And as also Gianluca mentioned, also a lot of debate on the biodegradable and compostable plastics.
Perfetto. Grazie.
Okay, thanks a lot for elaborating on that. And yeah, again, the motivation to our participants, to all of you. If you have other questions to Konsengrod or Mr. Bertazzoli or also Ms. Parker, you can also, because we have still some time, unmute your microphone and directly join the conversation. And if this is not the case, then I would try to see one topic that I think we started with, and Ms. Parker already mentioned the importance of overarching framework policies and having legislation then fall under that to make it clear for the policymakers and for the implementers of such policies what the logic is behind, but also make it more secure, I guess, for any legal actions in the future. And I think in that regard, we have a nice example in the European Commission with the Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, the Single-Use Plastics Directive, which do refer to each other, and then the national legislations partly coming after it, and in the case of the plastic tax, also independent, and sometimes causing confusion. That's a term I learned today, confusiono infernale. So thank you also for that little Italian. I think that was very nice. That's the only thing I understood. And so, yes, working on these legal frameworks is something that, of course, we do here in the CAPSI project as part of the export initiative. Koen Sengrod explained in detail what we what we have done in terms of recommendations to Thailand. And in 2 weeks' time, we have the big stakeholder consultation workshop on these recommendations. So we will be very interested to see the feedback. And yeah, if you are also interested in staying in touch with us, then do that through the community of practice. And here you also see the password again for the PowerPoint. Sorry, I'm a bit too slow for the you see the password for the PowerPoint download. All the presentations are already on the Green Technology Hub website. And as this is the last webinar of our series, we would very much like you to also give us your feedback on what you liked about, what you think could be improved. And if you scan this QR code, and also I think we put the link in the chat, if you could spend the 2 minutes to answer a few very concise questions on this webinar, this would help us a lot continuously improve our dialogue events and would be greatly appreciated. All right. And with that, I would then like to thank all of our presenters very much for their input, for their time. Thank you very much, Ms. Parker, for sharing on the German experience. Thank you very much, Mr. Bertasoli and Kun Sengrod, and to all of you participating in this webinar. I hope it was informative, and we look forward to being in touch with you in the future.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the time and for the English.
I think it worked out very well. Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Okay.
bye. Thank you very much.
Bye, bye, everybody.
Bye.